Hello, Paulo Leite here, record collector. Today I want to have some fun and I want to share with you instances in which I was cheated. Well, people may think that record collectors are immune to that. On the contrary, sometimes we make mistakes and we do get duped. Starting with Gentleman Jim. This is a compilation by Jim Reeves that was released around 1996. At the time, I was trying to get a little more into country music and trying to discover or get to know a little bit more about its most representative names. Names like Johnny Cash, Glenn Campbell, Jim Reeves, Tammy Wynette, and so many others. And when I saw this album at my local record shop, I saw it as a great opportunity to meet his work. I was sold right here when it says 25 great songs. And in reality, this CD is pretty much trash. The problem is that these are not songs taken from his studio albums. What this record label did here was just to put some mishmash collection of live recordings that are not particularly well recorded. By the way, most of these recordings come from the 50s and the 60s, most of them from the 50s. And at the time, technology regarding live recording wasn't as good as it became in the 70s, for example. At the time, there is a lot of noise, there is a lot of audience noise, and the quality of the sound itself of the music is very below par. I'm not very happy with this. And, well, this is the dishonesty of the record label that never tells anywhere in the cover that these are live recordings. So we are duped into thinking that these recordings, they were taken from the studio albums, when in fact, no. There are tons of recordings from the 50s and the 60s that sound great, even by today's standards. But when it came to live recordings, no, that was not the case. The Beatles have a famous concert that they gave in a stadium, I forget which one, where most of the recording, what you hear is teenagers kicking and screaming, and very little of the Beatles. And only recently there was a technology good enough to clean those recordings and bring the Beatles up while diminishing the sound of all the noise around them. But back then, that was not possible. So what you get in a compilation like this is subpar audio that will leave you very disappointed. Now you may ask yourself, why do things like this happen? Well, the simple answer is dishonesty. But there's more to that. The real reason behind all this is actually cost. The studio masters, they are very expensive compared to the live recordings. So when a record label, a second tier or a third tier record label that specializes in compilations, they want to put together a product like this, the price that they would pay for the original studio masters is much higher than the live recordings that tend to be cheaper precisely because the quality is lower. Some record labels will mix together in the same album masters from the original studio albums of a certain artist and some live recordings in order to try to lower the price a little bit. That's one of the reasons why these albums tend to be so cheap. You find them on gas stations and supermarkets for $4.95, and that's the reason why, because the masters are relatively cheap. And they're cheap because the quality is not that good. Next, something very similar happens here. Now, this is a double CD. One CD dedicated to 3 Degrees. 3 Degrees was a female vocal group from the 70s. They were amazing, and I love them very much. And the second CD, you see here, The Ladies of the Supremes, because this is obviously minus Diana Ross. And the problem here is not necessarily the quality of the audio. Well, in the end it is. But the real issue here is that these are not live recordings. Instead, what this record label does is to recreate those masters and try to keep the costs down by using cheap workstations, reproducing the sound from the 70s. You know, these are mostly soul, disco music, and they had lush orchestrations, beautiful orchestrations when they were recorded back in the 60s and the 70s. But not in this case. These recordings were probably produced during the late 90s or the early 2000s. We have the real artists singing on these tracks, but instead of a real orchestra with strings, we have a cheap workstation with some plastic strings, some plastic drums, some plastic horn section, and it sounds horribly. And there are several record labels that are specialized in doing this. This is one of them. It's called Air. They are, I think, based in Ireland, And this is their entire business model. Cheap compilations with songs that are mostly recreations of the classic studio albums they don't want to pay for. And again, why do products like this exist? Well, cost is a big issue. A lot of people don't care if the sound quality is bad or if they're not listening to the original masters from the 70s and the 60s. All they care about is cost, and this is pretty much a very cheap album. Well, the second thing is that many of these artists, they are making money selling these recreations of songs they sung 20 or 30 years ago. And here's how this works. When a record label signs an artist to release an album, usually what they used to do back in the 60s and the 70s, and I think they still do this today, is that by contract they forbid the artist to re-record those songs that are being released in the album. Now that will make sure that the record label has something like 25 to 30 years of no competition when it comes to making money out of those masters. Now, after that period of 2 or 3 decades, the artist is finally free to re-record those songs and own those masters. And this is pretty much how a CD like this is born. A record label that wants cheap product, instead of going to Sony Music or Universal Music, the companies that own the original masters, that are very expensive, they go direct to the artist and license a cheap version, a cheap recreation of those songs that they themselves immortalized. And in fact, a lot of these products end up making a lot of sense because a lot of consumers either don't know the difference between those recordings or don't care and prefer the low price. Now, not all record labels do this when it comes to releasing compilations. This compilation, for example, I bought this one years ago, and this one contains the real studio masters with good quality sound. Now, I have to clarify one thing. On this album, I was indeed cheated. But on this one, I was not cheated because I understood what kind of album this was. I ended up buying this because I teach film production at a university. And one of the subjects that I teach is precisely music licensing for films. And I wanted an album like this to give as an example to my students on how many times film producers, they will pay for these versions instead of the original versions because, again, price is most of the times king. Next. Now the next 2 examples, they hurt a lot because I love these albums. So this is In the Court of the Crimson King by King Crimson from 1969. This is a beautiful album. And I bought this at a record fair in Barcelona, Spain. And at the time I had already been all over the fair. And I was kind of in a hurry to get to the airport to catch my flight. And I saw this at the door. Someone was selling those, and I said to myself, wow, so cheap, so good. Yeah, it was a mistake. And I didn't see it immediately. I should have, but I didn't. So that's on me. This is clearly a bad job because you look inside and the image is all squashed. The colors are not good. And by the way, this CD that you see here, this is a black CD I think these CDs, they were produced originally for the PlayStation, the game console. And you also see that the artwork is very clumsy, very low definition. This was clearly a low resolution image that was put on the record. You can also see here that in the package, the disc doesn't fit well. It's a bit tight, and in the end it comes through the other side right here. So this clearly is a fake product. So no, that's not good. The sound quality is not that bad because this is a copy of the CD, but no, this is not a good product. It's badly produced, badly made, and all the artwork, all the lettering, everything here is amateur, so no. From the same seller, I ended up also buying Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin from 1975, and also a disastrous buy. By the way, both of these albums, they were very cheap. I only paid something like €4 for each one of them. I should have known that the price was too good to be true, because it was. Same thing here with the Led Zeppelin, is also a black CD, and also the bad artwork that is put here. So everything here is not good quality, and I was very angry when I got home and I realized that I have been duped. Now, later I understood that these are cheap fakes that are made in Russia. So yeah, that was my mistake. I should have known better. In the end, these are counterfeited CDs that try to fool you into thinking that you're buying the real deal. By the way, there is a difference between pirated stuff and counterfeited stuff. Counterfeited products will try to fool you into thinking that you're buying the legit ones. Pirated products, on the other hand, they really look fake because they know that people who buy them probably don't care. Here's an example. 20 some years ago, I bought this collection of DVDs in Macau, China. And I'm a huge fan of Buster Keaton. And when I saw this, I said to myself, wow, I need to have this. And it didn't bother me that they had some inscriptions in Chinese because, well, I'm buying this in Macau. So this probably is a local release for the Chinese market. However, this is not a legit release. It looks like one because it has a box, it has everything. It has two boxes with all the DVDs. But when you inspect the boxes a little bit closer, you will see that there are inconsistencies regarding the inscriptions on the discs. And that's how many times you catch the counterfeited goods, because there are certain details that are not perfect. So here's the example. The artwork of this disc is very different from the artwork of this disc. And even the numbers that they put here, they look kind of fake. They don't look like the kind of visual that a legit DVD label would put on a collection like this. So this is a counterfeited that has a level of perfection that leaves a lot to be desired. So when I got home, I was fairly quick to realize that I had bought counterfeited discs. Piracy, on the other hand, doesn't see the need to hide itself. This is a pirated copy of 28 Weeks Later. And as you can see, this is a poor Xerox copy of the poster of the movie, and the disc itself is just a blank DVD. So whenever you buy records, always try to inspect the edition that you're buying to see if what you're buying is exactly what you're expecting. If the songs are the same, if you're buying the real studio masters that you're expecting to find, if the discs are in order, if the albums are legit. So yes, I have been duped before, and that's life. So please remember, visit record shops, buy records. Music is life. Thank you. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. There's more great content coming soon. Thank you.